All right, we're recording now. So, but yeah, I was just saying, yeah, thank you. You're the first person I've done this with, and I literally couldn't think of a better person to do it with through all the emailing and stuff we've done. I really appreciate everything you've done to help put this together, and for your time, man. I thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me for this podcast. It's very my pleasure to be talking here now.
No, cool, man. And yeah, again, also, I wanted to say a massive congratulations on the on having a baby. There's few things in life. Well, there's many things, I guess, but there's one thing especially that puts a massive smile on my face, and it's seeing people have babies. It's so congratulations with that. How's everything going with the baby?
Thank you. So far, it's been going very good. It's a constant worry, but it's all good, and I'm very, very grateful to have a baby.
Yeah, it's cool. It's aside from the sleep and stuff, I know we talked about it a bit before we started recording here, but it's all like all this crazy chaotic beginning of the first couple months is, it goes by so fast, and it's something that, yeah, it just becomes like an absolute obsession every day. I just can't wait to see my little girl, and it's cool, man. I really it makes me happy to see other people go through it, because nothing humbles me more than the dad life.
Yeah. I was actually a bit worried about it before we got the baby, and I was thinking how am I going to survive, with the lack of sleep and all that, so on. But turns out that, as I explained you, that my girlfriend has been very supportive about the sleeping schedules and kind of allowing me to sleep when I had to wake up early in the morning to go to work. And that's been super nice. And then, rest of the things, life just takes care. And that's a very natural process. And been very, surprised to see how natural it's been.
That's great. Have you always been have you ever been, I've never considered myself to be a morning person at all, ever in my life. And since we had our kid, I've made a point to be up very early most days of the week. And have you been a morning person? That was probably the biggest adjustment for me, because either I sleep in and wake up on the fly and everything's just grab a coffee and try and catch up to the day. But waking up early, I don't know. I think there's a benefit to being up a little bit before, and whether it's to get a ride in or do some yoga or something.
Well, to be honest, all my life, after I was done with my teenage days, because teenagers always sleep late, but after, I started getting very serious about competing and getting ready for the contest season, and kind of, stepping up to the next level of my writing, I started writing in the early mornings. Mm-hmm. And that was a very interesting shift that happened during the early days of my pro career. And I started to realize the real benefits of waking up early and going to write in the first thing in the morning. I've had some pretty crazy schedules with writing when it comes to waking up early. But, in the beginning of my pro career, I was still working part-time, or actually full-time at that period. I think it was 1 year when I was working at the picture framing shop. I was doing picture frames for the paintings. And I would start my days at 10 a.m. and then I would work until 5 or 6 p.m. So I wanted to get a few hours of writing every day, because I knew that I'm on a mission, and I want to win that contest in Toronto back in '98. And I had to go writing at 7 a.m. So that was the time when I started waking up 5:30, and I went to my writing spot, indoor place in Helsinki, the whole winter at 7 a.m. sharp. I started writing, and I could write 2.5 hours before work, and then I would go to work and go right after the work. So I was really on a mission. But sometimes it didn't feel nice, but it actually made me a whole lot better writer. Mm-hmm. And my theory is like, it's a very simple theory, and the theory is like, when you know how to do your tricks when you're really tired, imagine how good you can do them when you're not tired in the afternoon when the contest finals are on. So
wow.
that was a big motivator, and it kind of worked out.
That's a great philosophy. It's been something I think in order to keep up with riding, I've had to do that since we had the kid.
Yeah.
And now I'm lucky enough to have my riding spot in my house here. So yeah, to get this, yeah, I'm so lucky. But to have those early mornings, like it's interesting hearing you talk about it, because I haven't heard many people talk about it, and the people that I've spoken to about it, and I tell them what time I get up and I start riding, and they just call me a lunatic. So it's it's nice to know that someone else out there is, whether you still do it or not, it's nice to know that that's kind of a good formula to getting things moving with progression, which is good.
It's not only the progression. I mean, like later on, I kept on doing that anyways, because I just found out that it was a very wonderful way to wake up into the new day was with the riding. You would just, open up your body and mind and just, ride, and don't worry about being tired, because you're actually tired for the first 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes you'll be fine.
I always found that, like, when I showed up at work and I've already gotten like an hour of riding, and I start work at 7 a.m. So it makes for an early morning, and I've always been fine to be kind of a little bit groggy at work. But yeah, it's interesting. Like you say, there's just the initial kind of startup that is a little bit tumultuous at times. But then, yeah, once you get the blood flowing, and I'm lucky enough to be able to turn my music up pretty loud too in my spot. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Your brain gets with it, and then your body follows shortly after. And like you say, you kind of get used to it. I almost feel like more tired or groggy throughout the day when I don't do my normal morning routine. Right. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's just it's just my brain being weird, but it's I don't know. I found a lot of benefit to it, so it's cool to hear you talk about it. That's great, man.
I wish I had a garage like you have. My garage, the European garages are just big enough. You can fit one car, and you have to sneak out of the door of the car the way that I could not be more fat than I am now. So,
so I think like the first thing I wanted to start with here, so I started riding in 2013, so pretty recently, and of course, when one starts riding, the first thing they do is, especially now with the internet, you're able to just go through YouTube and see a million different riders and contests and how-to videos. And I think like the one biggest thing that really just blew my mind when I first saw it was the DVD that you did with Vicky, the KGB Impulsivity DVD. Right. I still, like, knowing that we were going to hang out today, I've watched that a couple times this week just to refresh my mind with it. And dude, like, that thing still, I feel like I have brain damage after I watch it. It's just, it's so amazing. Like, I know when you guys were doing it, it took you a while to do it.
Yeah.
And, like, there's no way for you guys to have known at the time, but did you guys have any inkling, like any idea of what you were about to put out into the Flatland world?
No, actually. And I don't, we never thought about that way. I think it was kind of like hey Vicky, or he called me or I call him. I can't remember how did it go, but it was like, hey, let's do a video together.
Right.
And, all right, let's do it. Let's start filming. And then, you start with your first trick and so on and so on. Then you start building the trick list you want to do. And then the trick list started to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you kind of like start sharing the videos, like what Vicky has done. I've seen, all right, I got to do at least something close to that level. Wow. So I'm not going to be any worse than he is. So it was kind of like a healthy battle. Like, we were sharing the tricks, like, all right, check this out and so on. And in back of my mind, sometimes I remember I was a little bit jealous on his level in a way that, oh, fuck, I had to throw down something crazy because I will look bad if I'm going to appear in the same video and he's doing that kind of crazy tricks. So I'm better really throw myself into this thing. And I'm not sure, maybe he felt the same when I was showing my tricks, and it just started to build a massive project. And a lot of the tricks I did, I threw away. I was not happy because I was just, aiming to put my prime, like really highest level tricks in there. And some of the tricks took me many tries. Like not many people know about the background of the video. Like for example, the hang 5 to 360 kickflip to halfbacker. I think it's the last trick of the video. It took me like, I'd say 4,000 to 5,000 tries to hit it one time. So it's kind of like, I don't suggest that kind of writing or that kind of approach to writing to everyone out there. It kind of, you really have to be on a mission to do some statements if you want to do that kind of tricks. It's not for fun anymore, basically. It's just kind of like, all right, I'm going to do my mark, and my mark is going to be there for, I don't know, next 20 years. And, it worked out now that you say that, you still feel like it's doing brain damage. So in a way that kind of makes me feel happy. Of course, I don't wish to make brain damage to anybody, but in a way, like I know what you mean. So that really warms my heart to hear that even after, I don't know, over 10 years, 12 years ago, we put it out. And it took like 4 or 5 years to complete the project. So I'm very happy that, it made such an impact to people.
It really did. I mean, personally, for sure. But, in one thing I wanted to do was just kind of like, I knew it was a very like important DVD to the Flatland scene. But what I did was I went through a lot of reviews online this week just to read like the general consensus of, the reviews after, everybody had watched it for the first time, and, writing a review, whether it was E-Frame on Flat Matters, or there was a thing on the X Games website, and just across the board.
Right.
You guys started literally like a new chapter of Flatland. It was, there almost is like a before that video type of Flatland, and then after that video type of Flatland. I think like, not only did you guys feed off each other quite obviously, but like, you can see that very much with the creativity side of it, whether, you guys had taken tricks that had already been done and then put a new style on those tricks. But then not only that, but you had created those switches in between those tricks that were so beyond basically what anybody had done by that point. And it just, it really just changed the game as far as like, just what people could do on a bike. And to see you guys do that, and considering so many of those switches, like nobody's even touched those. Like there was just a level of riding there that so many people just watched, and it started a lot of creativity in the Flatland scene with other people, which was great to see.
Well, I'm very humbled to hear that, and I wish that Vicky was sitting next to me here and we could talk about the project, but that's another time when we can do that. But it's still like we still, me and Vicky, we sometimes talk about it, talk about the impulsivity and how our writing was in there and so on. So we kind of know what we did or how much effort we put into the project, and it's I need to get a copy of that DVD. Actually, I'm very bad at this stuff. I have the YouTube copy. I whenever I need to see it, I go to the YouTube and I see it. Somebody thanks to somebody downloaded it to YouTube, and I basically, I hate to say this, and I shame on me that I lost the copy. I'm sometimes with when it comes to physical items in life. They come and go.
The one thing I wanted to ask, as far as like kind of when you guys were in the thick of recording that DVD, was obviously you come up with an idea. So like I'm really interested in the process between the conception of an idea of a trick or a switch or whatever it is you have in your brain. How do you work your way through it, as far as like, you know, from the idea itself? Like, is there a way to like actually plan how you're going to learn it? Can you learn it in increments? Like, was there a way that you guys tended to approach it, as far as like after you got the idea?
It really depends what kind of a trick we're talking about. Like, for example, the biggest tricks I did in my sections there were like one massive thing, like that kickflip, hang five kickflip thing, or mega spin to whopper to mega spin, that type of stuff. And I kind of didn't know if it's possible. I was like, I'm not really sure if it's possible, but I'm gonna keep on trying until I find out. So that kind of started, you know, feeding itself. I got closer, and then at one point I already touched the peg a little bit with my feet. Like, I landed it, but I didn't roll, and I crashed. So that was the moment I knew that, okay, if I touch it even for a very brief moment, I know it's possible.
Wow.
So that kind of gave me hope. And then, I don't know, 250 tries later, I touched the pegs with my other foot, so I was a little bit closer. So it was just like 1 millimeter at a time, getting closer. And then finally, after many days of trying it, like, I would try one trick until I was exhausted. I could not like try it anymore. Wow. I was mentally trained and I was physically beat up, and I was like, I'm gonna die. I can't try it anymore. I have to go to eat something, and I had to go to home, rest. And then next day I would do the whole thing again until the whole week passed, and then I landed it once.
Wow.
So that's the method that I approached the bigger tricks. And then there are combinations, like the longer tricks or combos. You would actually have to kind of dial in the pieces of the combo. Like, let's say there's like 5 to 6 or maybe 10 different switches. You need to work every single piece the way that you can actually combo them together. It's not about being lucky anymore. Like, you can't, you know, try one combo millions of times, because it would be very messy. Like, you have to have all the pieces very consistent until you can do it for the video.
That's amazing, dude. That's it's interesting to hear that you, like, just that flicker of, if you touch the peg, it's like, oh, this is actually possible.
Yeah.
And it kind of vindicates all the hard work that you've put into, you know, putting in, you know, just testing around with it and seeing if it is even reachable. But then, to kind of fuel the fire of, okay, I'm going to continue to chase this at this point, because that little flicker of success, and especially when you're kind of charting unknown territory at that point. Yeah, thanks for telling me kind of a little bit of the breakdown on that. How much of a difference is there? So when you're learning a trick and trying to get it for video, does it change the game a lot when you know that it's possible and you've pulled it a few times, when you start to dial things for contests? I'm curious about the difference between the two processes.
Interesting question, and I've been battling with that all my life, because you know, sometimes you pull a trick once for a video and you're like, yeah, that was a pretty hard trick, and then you might think it's nowhere close to be ready for a contest in next several months, and then you start kind of, you know, processing the trick, and then you start doing it, you land it again, and you land it a few more times, and then you understand that, okay, this is actually possible to get consistent for a contest, but it won't happen anytime soon. So you have to kind of be realistic about it and put your expectations on perspective in that way, that you understand that where you're taking yourself if you start working on with that trick to get ready for a contest. And instead of kind of like start working on with something and kind of thinking, okay, this is going to be ready next month. next month is the big contest and you're landing on your ass all the time while you flew all the way to Los Angeles from Finland, for example, and it happened. So it's kind of like learn by doing thing, trial error. So nowadays I'm quite realistic. Of course, I'm not competing anymore, and I'm not doing those big tricks anymore for our videos. So it's a different thing to understand it nowadays. But yeah, it's definitely a good question. And some of the tricks took me a very long time to get consistent for a contest. And I'm talking about 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You talk about how you and Vicky kind of like upped the game as you went through it. It's almost like, you know, in a project like that, you two are kind of, you know, your only resource to each other. And I know, well, something that I've learned over the years that I've been riding, you've helped me a lot, just with, you know, the correspondence that you and I have done. That mentorship is, you know, to have a mentor who's been through it before, and the concept of a mentor becomes a very important thing. Yes, with learning tricks, the physical part, but like, you know, the mental part of it was a big part for me as well. Did you have like a major mentor when you were coming up through this time?
Well, I guess the times when me and Vicky rode together a lot, we didn't really, you know, back then there wasn't a word. I mean, the mentorship thing weren't that public back in the days. Like nobody talked about it. You know, we were just riding and, you know, supporting each other. And I guess that was the mentorship I had. I had Vicky to ride with, or if I was in Finland, we would talk a lot in the phone, you know, or Skype or send messages. So it was definitely a big support to me, and I hope I was a big support for him too. So that worked as kind of like a mentorship thing. But with my 2.0 career, with my coming back to the scene back in 2015, I had worked with a mentor for many years in between. Like when I took my time out from Flatland, I kind of, you know, had to sit back because things got very intense for me with the level of riding and doing it for my living for 12 years. So I kind of, you know, had enough. And then a mentor walked into my life, and I worked with her for many years. And towards the flat arc, I remember that I was talking to her, I'd say for 6 months, almost every day. And we were kind of like working on the kind of things that I had pushed down deep down there in my subconscious about, all right, don't think about it, it didn't happen, and blah, 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 many things. And then we kind of got closer to a point that why I want to go back to the contest, why I had to go back to the stage, why I want to go there, and why I want to win again, and why did I want to win so many times before in my life, and so on. Like, things are not so simple. So I kind of made it a bit closer to the root of the problems and kind of let go of things. Like I could tell her anything and she would not judge me. Mm-hmm. And we built a very trustful relationship. And then, you know, it was a very interesting period of my life. And thanks to her, I made it to the very high position at the Flat Arc, because these things need to be kind of shared with people. Like if you stuff things deep down in your mind, you know, you just get nervous at the contest, basically.
Yeah, it's I mean, you were always very successful throughout your riding career, and you know, like you say, you had your share of ups and downs, but on your resume that last, you know, year and a half it definitely looks like you found something there, as far as like something in yourself through a mentor that was able to help kind of, you know, keep the ship pointed in the right direction of, you know, continuing to work at, you know, the progression that you wanted to have in a contest. And, you know, I think like one interesting thing is that you've taken on that role now, and with mentoring other riders through your coaching program. And it's an interesting thing because it's like you say, you have like these different chapters in your riding career, but I think like this, you starting your coaching career, and from what you and I have talked about a little bit, that definitely seems like kind of the new start of a new chapter in your riding career, is the coaching and mentoring to other new riders.
Yeah, that's right. And, one can do only that much for riding itself. I mean, for my own riding, I had to be realistic. I started to get injured, and the injuries aren't getting easier, basically, like with the age. And also, like, I start to question myself, like, why do I want to continue competing? Like, I did it now, like, I did my small comeback, and I'm like, all right, well, why would I want to continue going further down that road? Because now I did good, and I just, didn't see the point of going further because it doesn't change anything for me anymore. So it was a very interesting insight I got from it. And same thing goes with the very heavy, big treks. I had to be realistic that it's very demanding on the body. And also I have 9-to-5 job, and then I have my family now. It's like, it takes time also. And I'm no more professional in that sense, but I do have a lot of experience and I have a lot of knowledge about Flatland. So why not share it with other people? Because I always have had this, natural ability, or not natural ability, but I like to help people. In other words, like when I see people struggling with the trick, I have a natural tendency to go, okay, hey, let me help you out a little bit. Do this and this and this, and then all of a sudden the guy or the girl knows how to do that trick. So I've done that since many years. Like I remember I was doing that with Kimmo Hakana.
Wow.
I don't know if you know him, but like I basically, started teaching him how to do tricks, and then a couple of years later he becomes good, and then many years later he becomes pro.
Wow.
So that's one story, and that was way before this project, what I'm doing now. So I have a tendency to do little tweaks here and there for people to kind of do better on their bikes. So this is an interesting project I started with Toon maybe 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
And I've been also progressing as a coach with Toon, especially as an online coach, because it's not as simple as it sounds. Like, all right, let's just coach people online. It's again something that you kind of had to throw yourself into it and learn by doing. So I've been learning a lot with Toon, and then several other people who's been coming to the program. So it's been a very interesting learning process. And to be honest, I'm as passionate about this as about my riding back in the days.
That's amazing to hear, man. And like, I've told you how much you've helped me with riding and getting ready for competition, but like just the value of someone like yourself who's been there, done it, seen the roadblocks, dealt with injury or any other, things that come along. To have somebody with that kind of experience is incredibly valuable for somebody who's on the grind, and especially in a sport where there's very few people that do it, and out of those people, even fewer take it as seriously as a lot of people want to. So to have someone like yourself do it is I can't imagine like how important it is for a lot of people. Have you how has your coaching program evolved? Because if you were working for many years, as far as like, I know how long you worked with Toon, how has it evolved from when you used to be at like kind of very high competitive level of your riding?
I would say the major thing is that I'm tracking the progression the way that I see from the numbers or the results, that when the rider gets tired.
Right.
So when I was doing my riding in my 1.0 career, I had no idea if I were training too much or if I were tired. I would just, keep on going because, riding 6 hours a day was the thing to do. And not taking days off, it was another thing to do, like just keep on going. And then towards the competition, you just ride harder. And it works until a certain extent, but then, when the rider really gets tired, you can see from the results in the daily. I have a daily tracking system for the riders in the program. So I can see from the numbers when the numbers get slow, it's time to rest. That's something very important that I do because I don't want to burn anybody out with my program. That's not my initial goal. My goal is to make people ride better and still feel good. When they wake up in the morning, if they wake up all beaten up and very tired, it's time to, talk to me about it. And then, I tell the rider to have a day off or maybe 2 days off or maybe 1 week, a little bit less riding. So it's really about this kind of communication sometimes with Toon and other people, because riders, when they kind of, just ride, they don't find out these things themselves. And they might need somebody to tell kind of, the direction they need to go now.
That's interesting because with like a lot of sports psychology, when people work with coaches, whether it's a physical coach or mindset coach, it is interesting how somebody can see it before the athlete themselves tends to see it. And overtraining, like you've spoken pretty openly about your burnout and things. So that's really interesting to see that you have kind of at least found some ways to find those red flags to maybe stop that before it even happens. It's very hard for a rider to know like that threshold of whether it's mental burnout or physical burnout. Am I just being lazy right now? Is that why I don't want to ride today? Or is there actually like a deeper reason with, it would be more beneficial to take a day or two off and, do some stretching or, whatever it is, to just have somebody else to kind of point that out. I think that must be incredibly valuable for someone who you're coaching.
I give you an interesting example of this one with Tone. What happened with him? Like his riding started to, I started to see that, something is going on in there. Something that, all right, he's riding harder than ever before. And, I'm doing whatever I can to make him ride better, but his results aren't following. And I started to think, okay, what's going on? And the people in Thai culture never say no, or I don't know how to explain, but if I ask if you were from their culture and I would ask, how are you? They have a tendency to say that I'm fine, I'm doing fine. So until I had to really ask how are you?
Yeah.
Tell me. You can tell me how are you? And then he told me that he's feeling a little bit tired. And then we started to talk about it, and then I realized that it must be very hard to ride in the plus 43 Celsius weather.
Yeah.
So then we started to adjust his kind of daily schedule into that, and weekly schedule, and taking more days off and so on. And now his results are going back up. But it took me a while to figure out like what's going on, because he wouldn't say without me kind of like poking, like, come on, tell me. I had to really fish the answer out of him. And
wow.
It worked out, and now he's fine. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, to have somebody like you say that literally, can kind of tell that something is there, whether you're tracking it through the metrics of the way you're, keeping track of progression, for you to be able to tell, and then like you say, you have to like nudge and fish it out of him. To have somebody to do that is incredibly valuable. So one thing I wanted to ask you, because you've got the different levels of your coaching. is there much of a variance between the three levels? So from like the top pro, somebody who's fighting for podium at, a major stop on world circuit, to someone like myself who's at an amateur level, but, still very driven and very motivated. It seems like communication is a little less with the amateur level, but is there much that differs as far as the program between the two?
Well, in the highest level of coaching, I offer much more communication, because I know, like, when the guys are riding 5 to 6 hours a day, they better have somebody to talk with, because chances are that none of their friends are riding like that. So you're pretty alone in there, in your own mission. One is in Thailand, and one is in Spain, and one is in here, and so on. And when you have nobody to talk about that, hey, I'm here. I rode the same route that you're taking now. I know what it is to ride 6 hours a day. So I'm here to talk with them every day, basically. Not 24/7, because I have my 9 to 5 job, and I can't. Sometimes when I go to the toilet, I can, send a message in there, but really talk about things. It's usually after my office hours. So that's the biggest difference. And then I have this concept called shadow practice, and it's basically a live video call to your spot. And I pretend as a judge. I'm a judge, as I used to be a judge before, until now. So I would be the judge on this side of the screen, and then the rider puts his phone on the floor, and I watch the video call with their contest run. So I see how the contest run is, and I mark the mistakes, and I give the score, and you either got 5th place, or you got 1st place, or you got last place. Yeah. So I build the pressure like that. So we try to kind of create the same environment as it would be on the stage. Like, I want the rider to get as close to the nervousness feeling as it's possible at their home spot. So they kind of, learn to ride under the pressure. So that's on the highest level. And then the next level is advanced, and the communication is once a week. And I don't offer the video call to your spot in that level of coaching, because that's usually the people who are approaching me with the advanced level in mind. They have a lot less time to ride than their guys on the top pro level. So that's something is still, quite intense in that sense. Like, I'm still, tracking the progression, and I try to, do whatever I can so the rider, gets the best out of him and makes the best possible version of himself when it comes to riding. Like, one might want to, step from the amateur level to pro level. So, once a week communication is enough in that way. Right. Or one wants to, make it to the finals in the pro level. It's still okay. But if you want to make it to the top 5, then I'd say that the daily communication makes a big difference. And then the least communication is in the amateur level of coaching. And that's basically, I'd say that it's pretty much same ingredients as in the advanced, but the budget is a bit lower, because I understand that not everyone can afford 100 euros a month for coaching. So I still want to offer something for them, and something enough to progress. So the people so far who's been approaching me in that level of coaching, they are able to ride twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week. So that's, enough communication. I do communication twice a month with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still quite a bit then. To have somebody to check in with, kind of report back as far as how things are going. That's still quite a bit of communication.
Yeah, it's still quite a bit of things to do, and also I do, deliver everyone instructions with the tricks if they need, some. It's very profound package. It's very profound package in general.
That's amazing. When you're dealing with different athletes, whether it's, you know, at whatever level, if it's at the advanced or amateur level, I noticed that through reading different books about coaching or sports psychology or whatever, that a lot of different athletes respond to coaching a lot differently. Like, you know, someone like myself, I kind of need to like feel like I'm being a bit of a wimp about something and that I should, you know, kind of gear up and dig in a little harder. Whereas I know a lot of other athletes tend to respond better with like more of like a thoughtful, consoling approach. Is that something that you've noticed that you've had to deal with different people as far as like adjusting how you approach them with things?
If I were approaching everyone like I'm approaching Toon, for example, a lot of people would crush. You know, they would run away basically. So I that's one thing I need to be like, you need human skills. You know, you need to kind of read people and you need to be old enough to understand like, all right, there are so many different personalities out there and what works for him might not work for him. And, you know, you kind of have to find the methods of coaching with everyone. There are few kind of common laws that you have to kind of do to get your progression going and get consistent with. There are no shortcuts with repeats, for example, you know, like that's something. But then, you know, some people, they really need detailed information, like hold my hand type of stuff, do this and do this and do that. And that's perfectly fine. And then there are other people who kind of, you know, needs me to point the direction, or I'd go there and kind of go get it, figure it out, and then go there. And, you know, they need to figure things out by themselves, some of the things, but they still need guidance. So there are many, and then there are people who are not coachable at all. I had people in my system, and I don't mention any names, but, you know, I had people who I kind of noticed after 1 month that this person is not coachable, but he still wants to do my system, but I could sense that he don't really do what I ask him to do, because I can tell that. Like if the person does what I ask him to do, he progresses. But if he don't do what I ask him to do, he don't progress. And people that person didn't do, and, you know, it didn't work. It didn't work. So the one important question is like, are you coachable? You have to ask that yourself. Like, am I going to allow somebody to coach me? And if the answer is no, then that's fine. It's fine.
That's great. So I think it's fair to say at like either level, whether it's the advanced or amateur, through your coaching, there's a lot of work that somebody is going to get from you as a coach. The amount of communication and direction that someone's going to get at either level, that's more than most people will ever have an opportunity to be a part of. That's amazing, dude. Obviously, like a lot of people are going to get a lot of direction on the bike, but you've mentioned like a little bit with Toon. How much do you guide people off the bike as far as like frustration's been a big thing with me, because I try and keep a schedule of riding probably about 6 days a week and working on a trick. You know, I'll dig into a trick for, you know, good 45 minutes to an hour. And, you know, sometimes the practices go well, but sometimes the training can just feel like I'm bashing my head against the wall sometimes. And like frustration, something. So like off the bike, how much do you help guys out with stuff like that?
As much as they want to, but the whole mind training thing is still a new phenomenon, if you know what I mean. Like it's like, let's put it this way. If you do a lot of pull-ups, you gain a bigger muscle, you get stronger, physically stronger, and you see the result. Or if you practice time machine, And then you just keep on practicing time machine. Eventually you can do it faster and you can do more spins and you can do it more consistent and so on and so on. And then all of a sudden you can do it no-handed. And then after that you can actually do a blender and so on and so on. So that's kind of like something concrete, if you know what I mean. And then when you start working with your mind, it's like you cannot see anything. There is nothing. You keep on working with your mind and you practice with your mind and you cannot see anything, except you will bang your head less on that wall. Eventually you'll find out that, but put it this way, like it's kind of like learning a new sport completely. Like, you go to your first tennis lesson ever. You probably suck on tennis. You cannot do it. But you keep on doing that every day. Eventually you are able to play tennis a little bit. And then if you continue doing it for 10 years, then you're pretty good at it. So it's the same thing with the mind stuff. But with the mind stuff, it's still a relatively new subject, especially in the action sports or in Flatland. So instead of kind of taking the preacher man approach to it, I am offering that to the riders if they want to, but they need to be ready for that. And I have one rider in my program at the moment that I'm teaching him some concentration techniques, and they're working so far. And he's very ambitious to learn more about that. And he is mature enough to kind of understand that it benefits. And Toon meditates every day, for example. He's been doing that for a year and a half now. So there are things that, I teach off the bike, but with this stuff, I need to be careful so I don't sound like a preacher man or a life coach or something like that, because I'm very rational about these things. All right, this thing works, and if you get your breathing right and you practice your breathing, things will change, and you practice some of the techniques in the mind. Your ability to concentrate gets better and you have less bad sessions. So yes, it's a quite wide system I offer, but some of the things comes from the rider. I can tell, all right, we can practice this, but you really need to be ready for that and you need to be wanting to do that.
That's great, man. When we were doing a bit of correspondence leading up to this call, you mentioned something about a lot of riders look for the short-term fix, whether that's with training or practicing for contests themselves, as opposed to a lot of, something that you seem to encourage a lot, which is the long-term progress approach to, the philosophy of how you ride. What exactly do you mean by that?
I think I answered briefly on that one in my previous answer, where I was explaining that if you want to do a blender, you first got to do a time machine, and then you have to learn it on the pedal and learn the pedal time machine very good until you can do the blender and so on. So it applies, that kind of mindset applies to everything in riding. If you want to do, let's say, multiple whiplashes, brakeless, you just have to kind of keep doing the double until you get very good at double, and then get the triple until you get very good at triple, and so on, so on, so on. So there are many supportive tricks also, like, let's say I was talking about whiplash, that kind of brings me into a jump flash or other type of whiplashes. So you first got to learn the fundamental technique of each trick. So sometimes it takes a bit longer time to learn the fundamental technique of the trick that you actually want to learn. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to learn the turbine whiplash, brakeless turbine whiplash, then you have to get very good with normal whiplashes and so on. So a lot of the riders are not understanding completely the idea of the process of learning. So a lot of them want to get very good very fast, which is fine. I understand that. And that's why I offer the only tricks section. But, sometimes I might ask that rider to learn something else than the trick that he wants to learn immediately, because I see that, all right, in order to learn this trick, you need to build this kind of skill, and that kind of skill builds up with this kind of technique, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I guess, the answer to your question.
Yeah, that's great. I've worked with online coaching for a couple of fitness things. I've done online coaching for yoga. Yoga is something I still do every day. And the approach with a lot of online coaching seems to be very different than what you're offering, as far as like that one-on-one approach with, whether it's the communication or whether it's just a single trick where you actually go out and film, something for somebody to watch and have as a reference point. That's pretty unique. I've never really seen that before, the way you're doing it. Is that, you obviously, you planned it for that to be a very big difference between most approaching with online coaching and stuff, probably, right?
Yes. And if you were, or I were a real businessman, I'd do it differently. But to be honest, like, this is the way I see, and this is the way I know how to coach people. And you can get into certain level of coaching with video library, like with high quality videos, how to do tricks and so on. But if you don't have a real person in this end that you're accountable with your results, or you somebody that's actually talking to you or texting you, then I don't believe that you can achieve same results. That's just as simple as it is in my mind.
It seems like the quality over quantity thing is a very, a theme that reigns pretty heavily with your idea towards this. And I think, as a rider myself, that makes a ton of sense. So it's really cool to hear how you planned it out, and also the humility that you seem to have. Yes, you're doing this and you're taking it on, very seriously, but you are still learning as you go. That's something that I've found is really valuable for people to know. And for myself, I always try and have a level of humility like that. So for you to be quite open about it as well, I think, it's going to be very, very beneficial for people to work with you, but it's also kind of neat to see the progress of how you're going to develop everything as you work with athletes. So like, outside of coaching, if there were a few things that you could recommend for like a really hungry, I think a lot of people that have started listening to my podcast that I've heard back from the most are people kind of like myself, who are at the amateur level, people that are really hungry and still kind of, finding their way into the sport, whether they've been at it for just a year or so. Is there things aside from coaching that you could recommend to kind of shape up and get them started on like a good way that they could maybe start approaching the coaching idea?
Be open to the basic tricks. Learn as much as you can, all kinds of tricks. That's probably the best advice I can give, like a really, really good tip, that learn anything, all the tricks you can do. Just don't try to hop over tricks or techniques because you want to get there faster, because you will find out that riding is not that fun if you kind of lack the fundamentals. So I'm not talking about learning every single detail, out there. I mean, of course, that would be the ideal case if you have a lot of time to work with. But, talk with somebody who understands the process and kind of, stick to the process and understand that it will take some time, and more you skip the basics, more you're going to have trouble later on. So that's some valuable advising over there.
That's great advice, man. I think like one thing I wanted to bring up was I think that anybody that follows you on social media can still see that you're riding, and the clips that you put out are still absolutely amazing and unique, and it still looks like you're having a lot of fun on the bike. Where is your riding at right now?
Oh, good question. Good question. You know, like I don't know, man. Like it's in a fun place. It's in a level. It's in a kind of in a psychological level. If you measure it in a psychological level, I'm on a higher level than ever because I'm actually I don't really care anymore about having the very highest level. So I don't have to prove that to myself, or I don't have to prove that to anybody. But I can, just throw fun stuff that takes me few tries. It's actually good therapy for myself to go out to my spot and do a trick that I can do within 25 tries. So it's fun. So I don't ride as much as I would like to because I have many things to take care, as I mentioned before. And also, like, now that I'm coaching people and I'm taking it very serious, that's taking a lot of my time also away from my own bike, but which is fine. That's fine. So
I see those clips of you doing tricks in the snow, and I think that's safe to say that those are difficult enough that nobody else is going to try and do any of those tricks. There was one where you did, I think you had your bike wedged up at the top of a snowbank and you did a decade and then dove immediately off your bike straight onto your face.
That was in our backyard.
Well, I got to thank you for that because that put a massive smile on my face. That was super funny. Dude, I don't know. I think that's good enough for today. And I just want to say, man, like, thank you so much for everything that you've done in the past. Whether it's, giving us something to watch on YouTube, either the DVDs or your contest stuff, or, talking to you at contests, whether you were judging or just hanging out, but especially doing this for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for, again, inviting me to be your first guest in your podcast. It was very nice talking with you, and I can see that the time flies. Like, we've been talking an hour and a half almost here. So yeah. It's been a nice conversation, and, both of us are very passionate about progression and Flatland, so we could continue talking about this all night for me and all day for you. But let's leave it like that, and keep on doing your podcast. You're doing a good thing. It's definitely something that needs to be in our culture, and keep on doing it. Thank you
so much.
And thanks for everyone. Thanks for all the support and listening to this podcast.